How's it going, everyone? It is Prashan here, and I have Amanda here with me.
Hi, hello everyone. How's it going?
Good, good. So we're gonna talk some Gwenpool today. Gwenpool is one of the newest cards in Marvel Snap. She is a 4/6, I believe. Yes, a 4/6, and she picks three random cards in your hand and gives them +2 power, which is a pretty cool ability.
It
And
is a pretty cool ability.
I don't know that much about Gwenpool, to be honest, so that's why I have Amanda here to help me out. But I do know how she started. She was on a Secret Wars cover that because they had tons of variant covers, and
Mm-hmm.
she was just laying there in the pool in a Deadpool costume, and then boom, you have Gwenpool.
That's basically what happened. I mean, I think Secret Wars was a cool time for variant covers because Secret Wars being this world already that's like filled with like a bunch of alternate versions of people and melding of, alternate worlds and the multiverse that got smushed together with Doom's battle world. It's like you're just asking for a million variant covers that you can have super fun with. So that is definitely where Gwen first appeared. She did appear on Secret Wars issue Deadpool's Secret Wars issue number 2.
Yes.
That is where she makes her first appearance. And then after that, she became so popular that they decided, why don't we just like make her a real character? So that was her first appearance in terms of just visually, but in terms of when we actually get introduced to her, when she actually appears in the comics and we meet Gwenpool, that actually happens in Howard the Duck, the late 2015 series, which is a little bit confusing for anyone that's looking for it, by the way, because there actually is two Howard the Duck series that are in 2015. But this is the one that started in late 2015, so you'll sometimes also see it 2016 because of that thing. I think we've talked about this before, Prashan, with the idea of the date that something is released and then the cover date being a few months after, and
Yeah.
how that comes from the old days of comics because they wanted everyone to think that things were like newer for longer, so it was for shelf life of the comic and on racks and stuff. So if you're looking for it, that's where it is. But you will see two Howard the Duck series from 2015. It's not the first one; it's the next one. I think both of them actually even might be by Zdarsky, so also confusing. Got to sell those comics though, so got to go to issue number 1. So there are some important things that we learn about this character. I would say one of the most crucial things about Gwenpool is how she just never gets to wear pants. That is something that comes up a lot with her. She never has pants. She's constantly trying to get pants, but there's never the material to make the pants. So she makes her first appearance in Howard the Duck, and we learn that she is from another universe, although it's not really clear as to how she gets to the main universe.
Yeah, because she's
And
basically like a fangirl. She knows
she
everything for the
is.
most part.
She is. Although she doesn't have an official reality number in terms of what Earth she's from, a lot of people believe that she's from basically our Earth because she does also have knowledge of things like the MCU comics. She is a fangirl. She read a lot of comics. She hails from a world where superheroes exist in comic books, so they are fictional. And she also has an extensive knowledge of the MCU. And at one point, I think she even gets a portal to go back to her home universe just to like update herself on like everything that's been happening on the MCU since she came over to Earth 616 in I guess 2015. And she knows, for example, when she meets Doctor Strange, she knows that Doctor Strange is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and Doctor Strange actually does say that he's like, yeah, I could see that makes sense to me. I think he could play me. So she knows weird things like that, and that is kind of in a way a power that she has, which is pretty cool because she herself doesn't really have superpowers in a traditional sense. A lot of her powers come from her knowledge of the MCU in that universe, and also her knowledge of the fact that she's in a comic. But we'll talk a little bit about that more later on because I have a whole section on powers if we want to discuss that.
All right.
But yeah, so we first meet her in Howard the Duck. We learn that she, yes, is a fangirl. She comes from an alternate reality. How she got here, there's a lot of stories that are thrown around about that, but none that I think have ever been fully cemented or confirmed as to how it happens. She also, we later learn in terms of retcon history, came here with her brother as well, but they end up getting separated. Teddy Pool.
And this Gwen is technically not Gwen Stacy, isn't it? Like Gwen.
She's Gwenpool. Yes. And so that is the miscommunication as well when she becomes a hero. So she decides, I'm in this world. I definitely don't want to be like just a person. So I'm going to go and like get a costume and be a hero. And so she ends up going to Ronnie's big warehouse of costumes or whatever it's called. She goes to Ronnie's and she ends up ordering a costume. And due to a sort of misinterpretation of her writing her name, that's how she becomes Gwenpool. But really, her name is Gwendolyn Poole. Gwen Poole.
Is that like Poole?
Yes, that's her last name. So her last name, and also then it just becomes her name, which works because, you know, she is kind of like this combo alternate version of, I would say, Gwen and Deadpool. Although she is still very much, kind of her own character too. It's weird. So the other thing is that when Gwen came to our Earth, she wasn't at a great time in her life. So right before she left her universe, she was actually kind of lost in this fantasy world and wasn't doing well in school. She like flunked out of school. And so her family kind of saw her as like a bit of a failure. So that's also something that comes up a lot in Gwen's stories and the themes of, I think, her trying to find her place and find where she belongs and what she excels at, because she comes from a place where I think she just felt she was never very good at stuff. And I feel like to be in a comic book world when that was your fantasy world, it's kind of like a weird dream come true, you know? Because it's like, I know everything about this place, but at the same time, like, I don't really belong in this place. So lots of interesting themes and tension and identity and stuff that you get to explore with this character. Yes. So she came with Teddy. Big Ronnie of Big Ronnie's Custom Battle Spandex. That is the official name of the shop. It also shows up, if you like Ronnie's, it also shows up in the Spider-Woman run that is before the one that's currently ongoing at the time of this recording. That was Carlo Pacheco's run, which I loved. So good. And Ronnie also makes an appearance there. Jess goes there to get her suit, Spider-Woman. So that's pretty fun. Ronnie did not have materials for pants when Gwen ordered her suit, which is why Gwen has no pants. And Ronnie literally said to her, look, there's no material for pants, so no pants. You're just going to wear big boots. That's what you got. That's what's up. And she does check in periodically to be like, hey, Ronnie, you got that material for the pants yet? And Ronnie's always like, no, I don't have that material for the pants. No pants for you. It's like no soup for you, but just no pants for you. Yeah. So we kind of start out with her in her first story where she's alongside Howard the Duck. Also, weirdly a fitting place to introduce, I think, Gwen, because she's a very off-the-wall character, and Howard the Duck also tends to be very off-the-wall. And there, Black Cat actually hires Howard the Duck to find who this woman is, because she saw her in the middle of the night. She took stuff from Black Cat, and Black Cat's like, I want to know what she took, and I want to know who the heck this girl is. And hilariously, Howard's like, okay, well, like, I'll start looking for her. And he goes to his desk. And where is she? She's right under his desk, just sitting there. And she's like, oh, hi. So he finds her pretty quickly. And then they kind of just go on a crazy adventure. He finds out that she stole a virus from Black Cat and then sold it to Hydra because she needed money. And he's like, that's awful. That's a super infectious virus. Like, Hydra's super evil. Why would you do that? And she's like, well, I needed money, and like the Avengers are going to fix it anyways. So who cares? But the Avengers at that time are actually in space. So then they have to go, Howard and Gwen have to go to Hydra to get the virus back. So that's
all the Avengers are always in space.
They're always in space. Yeah. They call them and then they get their voicemail and it's like, oh, we're in space right now. And they're like, dang it. And he's like, yeah, you can't just be doing stuff like this. Like, this is super sinister. Off-world. Yeah, always when you need them, right? It's like, oh, man, there's a terrible thing happening. Avengers assemble? And then they're like, nah, we're not here right now. Sorry. Aren't you supposed to be the protectors of Earth? Yeah. Why y'all always in space?
Earth's most mightiest heroes.
Yeah. Except for when they're away. Then someone else is Earth's mightiest heroes, I guess. True. You gotta call the Fantastic Four the X-Men or something. So they end up getting the virus back, and through also another crazy turn of events that I won't get into here. And while this is all happening, after this all happens, Gwen's like, well, I need money. So she ends up becoming a mercenary, a la Deadpool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she gets contracts from Ronnie. So Ronnie gives her contracts. During one of these contracts, she ends up being forcibly recruited by MODOK into his mercenary organization dedicated only to killing. After MODOK ends up killing her newfound friend and ally, Cecil, who is a hacker that she ends up befriending and sort of becoming her partner. So she goes on this journey with MODOK, the MODOK organization. Eventually, she ends up also becoming the leader of that. And at one point, she asked Doctor Strange to move her firmly into 616 because she can't have an ID because she isn't actually from that reality. So she doesn't belong there. So when people are like, yeah, but who are you? You need an ID to open a bank account or do anything. She can't do any of that stuff. So she asked Doctor Strange to move her over, and she gets moved over, and he's like, right, but then people in your universe might not remember you anymore if I do that. And she's like, that's fine. I don't think they care about me anyways. So she gets yeah. So she kind of gets blipped out of her universe, put into 616. So even though she's not inherently from there, that is kind of, I guess, her new home reality, you could say. Kind of I guess, what happens with Miles in a way.
Yeah.
Except her story is a lot more sad because she's like, yeah, my family probably doesn't care about me, so I'm cool with it. I'm
just
so sad
now.
Yeah, basically. Fortunately, she does have her brother. That she ends up having to go around to help him as well later in her adventures. But she ends up getting Cecil back. He comes back as a ghost. Doctor Strange is also able to make that happen. And she uses him to defeat MODOK by taking his skull, throwing it at MODOK, and releasing him like a Pokemon. Yeah. And then Cecil, because he's a hacker, as a ghost, is able to hack MODOK, and that's how they defeat MODOK. And then Gwen becomes the leader of the MODOK organization for a little while. She also, like I said, does help her brother, and she does also team up with Squirrel Girl to help Squirrel Girl out, because Squirrel Girl has to face her evil version from the negative zone. So it's also a thing that happens. Yeah. And we also filmed a video about Squirrel Girl, which will come out in the near future, I'm sure. And I also thought that was really fun because I was like, oh, we were just talking about Squirrel Girl. And I love that there's a Squirrel Girl, Gwenpool team up.
Yeah, well, off topic, but there's a random show on Disney Plus. I forget what it's called. I don't know if it's Marvel Heroes or something, but there's a team up of Miss Marvel and Squirrel Girl. And I was like, oh, this is funny.
That's so great. Yeah. That's so awesome. Yeah. So she also ends up joining the Champions as well. Okay. Which is for a second. She's on the Champions. She also meets Deadpool in 616. And they initially fight and then end up teaming up in the end, as is customary with comics.
Yeah. Normal team ups. That's how it goes.
Normal team ups.
They have a common mutual interest or enemy. They team up and then they're friends.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, who are you? Who are you? Yeah. And then they end up teaming up to take down Arcade because they're both on Murder World at the same time. And she also is really well known for her attachment to the West Coast Avengers. She's on that team with Kate Bishop. So that's
coming out soon too.
Yeah. West Coast Avengers. So that's pretty cool. She goes on an adventure with Kate and Robbie Reyes, Ghost Rider as well. And she has to also fight an evil version of herself. She also takes on Doctor Doom, and using her cool powers, she manages to trap him in basically the liminal space in between pages.
Oh, wow. So before we go deeper, what are her powers?
So she has awareness of the universe because she's read a lot of comics and is very familiar with the MCU. And because she is aware that she's in a comic book, it allows her to do things like break the fourth wall, like Deadpool also often does, But she can also go further than that. She can actually reach beyond panels. She can manipulate and adjust reality for a certain period of time. It's not permanent, so it's not like, I wouldn't say it's on like the level of someone like Scarlet Witch, but she could temporarily tweak something. However, it's kind of limited to like almost like editorial changes where it's like it might come back around that the character will like go back to how they were before.
Okay.
So she does trap Deadpool. She does trap Doctor Doom, for example, but Doctor Doom does escape. So then he just is like, well, I got out of that because that's temporary. So she can only do a lot of the stuff temporarily. But yeah, she can basically trap people in the gutter space of comics.
Oh wow!
So they get trapped in the gutters at the bottom and like around the borders of pages. She does this with a few people actually, but Doom is probably the coolest one I would say that she does it with. Yeah, and she does have knowledge. She can travel through time as well by moving through panels and through the gutter space in the pages. So, and she can trap people there. So she can move back in stories and stuff. So like if something happens here on like page like 15, she can go back to like page 2 and be like, I'm just going to go back to page 2 and like do that again. She can also do stuff like be aware of page counts. So she could be like near the end of a book and be like, okay, well, like this is probably what's going to happen because like we got 3 pages left in this book.
So let's fast forward through this, or let's go back and change this. So
yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty cool thing. However, her powers have sometimes that haven't worked consistently. There are times where she's had problems where for some reason her powers aren't working as good. She was telling Quentin Quire about them, I think, at one point, and then she goes to like use them, and then it doesn't work the way that she said. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, this is like weird. This normally works for me. Like usually this is what I do. Speaking of Quentin Quire, she also dates Quentin Quire as well.
Wait,
for a while.
Quentin
Quire is Kid Omega.
Oh, yeah.
Kid Omega. Yeah. Over on the X-Men. Kind of a resident little jerky jerk, I feel like we could say. Yeah, super annoying. I loved how in Krakoa, do you remember that running gag where like every time Quentin showed up, he just like got killed?
Yeah.
That was the thing near the beginning of the era.
You guys read Sabretooth War. His head's just in a box.
Oh, what? Yeah, I'm not caught up on Sabretooth War.
Okay,
that's crazy. So wait, is Wolverine just carrying around his head in a box?
No, Sabretooth is.
Why? What?
Carrying him around.
Just carrying him around. Is he using Quentin for anything? That must be annoying to carry his head around in a box. That's going to be...
Quentin just talks.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's like one of the worst things I can imagine. Yeah. Wow, well, Victor is a brave soul for choosing that. But Quentin Quire is super powerful, so I don't know. Is Sabretooth using him for his powers? Because he is psionic, so if you have his head, that's really all you need, I'd imagine.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty cool. Initially, actually, Gwen doesn't even like Quentin Quire. So they meet, I think, during their time on the West Coast Avengers. And initially, they just really hate each other. And that leads to them passionately making out, as sometimes does happen. And so they end up in this relationship. She also is tied to the origin of one of my favorite characters in comics, Jeff the Land Shark.
Oh, yeah. We do have Shark Week coming up.
Yeah, we do have Shark Week coming up.
Or Baby Shark. Jeff Week, we call it in Snap.
Yeah. Jeff Week. Jeff the Land Shark. It's Jeff Week. So he ends up being adopted by Gwen, who actually finds him during a fight against MODOK and Madame Mask. So she takes him in, she names him Jeff, and she ends up giving him to Deadpool for a while, because during Gwenpool Strikes Back, she has this whole fear that she's going to become irrelevant as a character. And she's like, if I'm irrelevant as a character, that means I won't be in the comics for a while. And I don't want Jeff to like not exist while I'm not existing. So I'm going to give him to Deadpool because Deadpool is always relevant. He'll always exist. Yeah. And so that way Jeff can continue to exist while I'm maybe MIA. And also Gwenpool Strikes Back. I don't know if you remember that cover with Gwen kissing Reed. Have you seen that cover?
No.
Oh, Yeah, I think in the links that I sent you, I think I put a. Did I put a descriptor of it?
Gwenpool Strikes Back?
Gwenpool Strikes Back. Yeah,
All right.
it's Gwenpool Strikes Back. Issue. I want to say it's like issue number 2 or issue number 12. But yeah, you should see. I think I sent it. Unbelievable.
Pretty sure you did.
Gwenpool Strikes Back 2. Yeah, click that one. Oh yeah, you can see it. That's the one. Yeah, so that's something that Gwen did to once again, you know, she's like trying to shock people, remain relevant, you know what I mean? Trying to stir up some controversy. Which she did. When that cover actually came out, I believe it was actually just controversial in general. Because, you know, Gwen is also typically seen as like a younger character, like I don't know if we would say teenager, but I would say like at least early 20s. And Reed is of course a very married man.
Oh yeah. He has gray in his beard.
Yeah, so it was controversial when it came out as well. And this is during that time where she's just basically like just trying to stay relevant, and she's worried that she's going to basically disappear. So she hands off Jeff.
Like self-awareness she has too. Like she knows when comic books are relevant or not, and she knows Deadpool is pretty much everywhere. It's like Deadpool, Wolverine, Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like these are the people that are going to always be carried forward. So if I want to leave a character with someone, like these are probably safe bets of people to leave them with, you know, to make sure that character's okay. But it is also, it's very cool. And it's very cool, I think, how they blend that sense of her character, of this idea of like her awareness. We see this in Deadpool sometimes too, which I really love about his character. This idea of it informing how they feel about themselves and also reflecting how they feel about themselves. So it's like this fear of relevance is also, once again, I think tied into this feeling that Gwen has about herself, this feel of inadequacy that she's had ever since she was a kid and she flunked out of high school and felt like a failure. I think there's part of her that always feels like she's failing at something, which, although she's this weird, wacky character, is a very human thing. So you can have a character that's like breaking the fourth wall and defeating people with skulls that are releasing ghosts like Pokemon. And you can still be like, man, I get this character because I know what it's like to feel like I just can't do anything right and that I'm afraid that like no one cares about me. Like, dang. So she ends up having that concern and she does get Deadpool back, or she does get Jeff back from Deadpool. When she returns, she does appear in It's Jeff, the Infinity comic, where we see her. Yeah, where we see her with Jeff again. And also Hawkeye as well also has Jeff for a while. And Jeff also ends up with Elsa, but I'll save that for the Jeff video. If anyone ever wants a Jeff video.
That would be awesome.
I love Jeff, and I have so much Jeff knowledge. I've been wanting to do a video on Jeff for a while myself, so.
Jeff Week.
Yeah, for Jeff Week, we should do it. I would so be down to talk about the history of Jeff. I love him. He's my favorite. And he's also sometimes so scrappy too. So she appears there, and then the other appearance that we have of her is in Love Unlimited, the Infinity comic. And there, she's actually established as being asexual. And she also is in a relationship for a little while with Julie Powers of the Power Pack.
Okay.
Yeah. And she kind of has this realization that although she's, you know, kissed people and like been with people, she's never really felt like sparks in the same way that other people do. And it's in that journey that she kind of realizes, oh, like maybe I'm ace. And then when she finds out that she's asexual, she's like, I'm repping all the ace people over here. And I also thought that was super cool because I always think about that. Like we don't have a lot of characters that are asexual in comics. We don't get to explore that a lot.
Groot is?
Maybe Groot. Yeah, I could see that. I could see Groot being ace, but it's just not something that gets talked about like a lot. Like there are definitely people that I think of. I think I was talking about this the other day. This might be controversial to have in here. So pardon me, fans that disagree with me, but I was saying I feel like Doctor Doom could maybe be ace because I feel like although he is a very sexy man, I think, and he definitely has relationships with people, with women, I don't think his relationships are ever really he's a passionate guy, but I don't think in romance he's a very passionate person. I don't think he has that kind of connection with people. A lot of his relationships are about like moving something forward or a partnership more than they're about like a sexual thing.
I think with a lot of superheroes and villains, they're more into themselves than they can be with anybody else.
That is also true. That is also true.
Is how it is with Doom.
You think Doom's end goal is Doom? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
He's like, I'm the best person for me.
Right.
And that's it.
I think that's how it is with a bunch of these villains.
So maybe he's not so much Ace. He's like, I don't even know what we call that. He's like just into himself.
Yeah. Maybe that's
solo.
a new thing.
That's a new thing. He's creating his own. That would also be very Doom, being like, I actually don't subscribe to any of these labels. I've made my own label, and it's the best one.
I am he. I am Doom.
I am all. So that is kind of where we leave her. She appears in Love Unlimited, and she's appeared in It's Jeff, and kind of what Gwen feared seems to have come to pass. She isn't as relevant as she once was when she was this wacky new character everyone was kind of into. However, I think she'll come back around, but yeah,
for sure. I think this resurgence with Marvel Snap and then people realizing how cool she is, I think.
Well, and I wonder if she might be in like Deadpool and Wolverine, or if we might get
a Gwenpool cameo. I think there's some controversy too on like Gwenpool not being as related to Deadpool as people think.
Right. You mean in terms of people wanting her to be more connected or wanting her to be more disconnected, like that kind of
more
thing?
Connected to Deadpool than she is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say the connection with her to Deadpool is, I do think she is kind of an alternate version of the character. She was literally introduced as an alternate version on a cover. But at the same time, what I like about her as an alternate version is that she isn't tied to just being a carbon copy. A lot of Spider alternates end up being like that. Like, you know, we get the origin story and it's the exact same as Peter's, but it's just, my name's Lucy the Spider Girl, and my story is that my uncle Jeff died. You know, it's like the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And so what I like about Gwenpool is her origin story is nothing like Deadpool's origin story, but there are a lot of similarities in the sense of her look, her name. She's also a mercenary. She's also wacky for her own reasons, and she also has a sense of self-awareness that I think Deadpool sometimes shows as well in the comics. Right. Definitely, and I just read Deadpool Samurai the manga. I'm going to be doing a collab video with Casually Comics.
Oh, nice.
Filming that on Thursday, actually. And that is another thing where when he's in the manga, he's talking about like all the rules of manga and like, well, this is what's going to happen because this is how manga is. And I'm like, I also love that too, because like it makes so much sense with Deadpool because he's also a huge like anime and manga fan. So getting to see that self-awareness in a thing that it's like, he's like, I know how this goes because I know about this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of Gwen. Those are her powers. I would say for recommended reading, I would say Howard the Duck. Technically, it's volume 6 as well, if that helps anyone to find it. Like I said, the end of 2015. Sometimes you're going to see that with the 2016 because of the cover date or whatever. Unbelievable Gwenpool, volume number 1 from 2016 by Christopher Hastings and G. Gurihiru, which also, if you're a fan of It's Jeff, G. Gurihiru, I believe, is also the artist on that comic as well, which I am a fan. So I was like, I need to go back and read Unbelievable Gwenpool because I haven't read all of that. West Coast Avengers, volume number 3 from 2018, Kelly Thompson and different artists throughout. Gwenpool Strikes Back, volume 1 from 2019 by Leo Williams and David Baldion, and David Baldion is also the same artist from the 2020 X Factor series. Actually, this is the same creative team from the 2020 X Factor series. So if you like that, you might also like Gwenpool Strikes Back. Same creative team there. And Love Unlimited Infinity Comic, issues number 43 to 48. Those are Gwen's issues, and that is by Jeremy Whitley and Bailey Rosenlund, which establishes Gwen as an ace character, which some people might be here for and some people might not be here for, but it's canon, baby. So what's in there? Canon is canon. Yeah. So I mean, it's really cool. I do love that Gwen has been able to have her own series and hold that. I think that's pretty special. You don't see that for a lot of characters that are like this. That are
Right. Because sometimes it's too much, or people don't think that it's the normal, traditional way a comic
it's
book character should be. So
yeah, and it's hard to have that staying power because it's like, what do you even write about? Like, this is a character that came from a variant cover. That the whole idea of why we like the character a lot, I think, is the look, right? So how do you expand that to a character that I actually care about in terms of who they are beyond like just the cool design of the character?
right.
And so the fact that we were able to do that with her, I think, speaks volumes as to just how relevant she can be, and why I think that Gwen also shouldn't worry about her relevance. So Gwen, if you're watching this in our world, if that's where you're from,
If you're aware of this,
yeah, you're relevant. So hold on to that, girl, because I think you got it. You had a whole series. You don't see that for characters like this. Other than, I mean, who are some alternate characters of like mainline characters?
just I would say Miles is the top.
Yeah. Miles has definitely just become his own thing,
Yeah.
even though he's also Spider-Man. He's
Right.
so, but that's the other thing. Miles is, I think, is so different as well from Peter, right? And I think that's
why it works.
the power. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, very cool stuff.
Yeah. So thank you for hanging out, Amanda. Thank you for telling us more about Gwenpool. Maybe we could get some Jeff. In a few weeks
Maybe
for
some Jeff. I would love to talk about Jeff. Also, what do you think of this card, by the way? I want to hear your takes on it. I feel like it's a really interesting card. I don't know as much how it applies to Gwen, other than I guess she can like warp reality, so she could be like, you're gonna be like cooler now because I said so.
Pretty much. Like her animations are pretty wacky, which I think is pretty cool. I did do a video on like some of the synergies and stuff like that, but I think she's gonna be a decent season pass card for Marvel Snap. Like I think she makes certain archetypes better. I'm gonna put her in the Silver Surfer deck because she just boosts up those cards even more, and then just surprise opponents at the end. Or
Yeah.
she could go and destroy too, because some destroy cards like to be buffed, and then even more. Or in move, where cards like to be any card archetype that likes to have more power. I think Gwenpool will fit in perfect.
I feel like it's interesting. So she's a 4/6, you said, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the only thing. I feel that her,
because she comes in. So then she comes in later, usually, unless you have something that's adjusting, your energy or something.
Unless
like
you're
that.
playing Arisham. So if you're playing Arisham, you get one more energy, but you have like 50 cards in your deck, so you might not even see Gwen.
Yeah, you might not see her because it's like it's just going to be a crazy amount of cards.
Yeah.
But that's interesting too because she is kind of later game. So when you bring her out, and then it's the stuff that's in your hand that gets the boost.
Yes, and it's up to 3 times, so she could hit a card 3 times. And give it
so it doesn't have to be 3 separate cards. It could be 1 potentially because it's random.
It's 3 at random.
I guess the cool thing about that too is that you do have a little bit more control because it is later game as to what's in your hand. So when you're making that play, it's like you have a better idea of what probably will get hit.
Right. So if you have like 1 card in your hand, it's going to get hit 3 times with +2 power. So
that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. If you can plan that, that would be pretty.
Oh yeah.
I mean, then you don't have a 5, but you might not need it. Yeah. Or that maybe that is your 5, and you're like, I'm just going to play that 5, and the game will be mine.
Yeah. Or you play her. I don't know. I'll figure it out. We'll see.
We'll figure it out and see how see what people do and what the meta becomes with her. But I feel like that is a really interesting and cool card. And I like that it isn't like traditionally OP necessarily, but there's so many scenarios where that could be super useful and become really OP as a support with other stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Marvel Snap's all about having surprise cards, and this is a surprise card that gives your other cards more power, and then your opponent can't count or expect what's going on, so you just win.
I love how it's unexpected. I also feel like that fits very well with the character in terms of just Gwen constantly doing wacky stuff that you're like, how's Gwen gonna get out of this? And then she's just like, I don't know, this weird thing. And you're like, what? Who does that? Only Gwenpool does that. Yeah.
So that is it for this episode of The History of. So till next time, be safe, keep on snapping, and peace. And make sure you follow Amanda too. I'll have her info down below for more comic nerdy geekness and pop culture stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Much of that stuff. All right. Bye, guys. See ya.
Snap.